The stew was bubbling when the wind turned sharp. It pushed through the screen door, carrying a trail of dust that danced across the wooden floor. The fire hissed as the pot simmered over it, a low sound that filled the empty room. And over that, like a ghost walking slow through the heat, came her humming. It was an old tune, soft and broken, the kind you hum when the words hurt too much to speak. Outside, the road shimmered under the sun. The sky was pale and pitiless, the kind that could burn a man's soul clean through. A single rider came along that road, slow as judgment, his horse moving with a tired limp. The man rode with his hat low, dust coating his coat, and the leather creaked like tired bones. Cole Bannister hadn't meant to stop. He meant to keep moving, the same way he'd done for years. But when that sound reached him, the faintest hum from far-off house, his hand froze on the reins. He knew that tune. His breath caught. The reins trembled. For a moment, all he could hear was the wind and the pulse in his throat. He dismounted, boots sinking into the dry earth. The old farmhouse stood ahead, its paint peeled by years of sun, its windows clouded and cracked. The hum carried through one of them, low and steady. He walked to the porch, boards groaning beneath him. Through the open door, he saw her, back turned, sleeves rolled up, hair pinned loose against her neck. She stirred the pot, the hem of her dress brushing against the stove's iron leg. She didn't turn when he knocked. Maybe she hadn't heard. Maybe she didn't care. He tried again, clearing his throat. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said. Her humming stopped. Silence filled the kitchen, heavy as a drawn gun. She turned slow. Her face was worn by the sun, but her eyes were something different. They held the kind of calm a person only gets after losing everything that could ever scare them. "I ain't seen smoke from this place in a long time," he said, touching the brim of his hat. Thought maybe someone was in need of help. Her gaze dropped to the dust on his boots, the long shadow of his coat. "You a traveler?" she asked. He nodded. "Just passing through." She said nothing for a while, turning back to the pot. The wooden spoon moved in quiet circles. "You can water your horse out back," she said. "There's a trough by the well." "Thank you kindly." He waited, but she didn't say more. The air between them was thick, something unspoken hanging like smoke that wouldn't clear. He stepped out to the well, filled a bucket, let the horse drink. The land around was dead, quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against her ears. When he came back, she was still humming. The same tune. The same damn tune. Cole stopped in the doorway. His hand found the frame, steadying himself as the old sound crawled under his skin. It wasn't possible. The melody was one he'd buried with the man who used to whistle it 5 years ago on a dusty main street called Red Mesa. He swallowed hard. "Ma'am," he said, voice rough. "That song, where'd you learn it?" Her stirring slowed. She didn't turn. The fire cracked once, and the clock on the wall ticked loud in the stillness. "My husband," she said softly, "used to play it on his harmonica every night before bed." Cole's throat tightened. "Your husband, he's still around?" Her hand froze. The spoon tapped the pot's rim once before she set it down. She turned then, slow as the sun falling behind the mesa, and looked him straight in the eye. "He was shot," she said, 5 years ago, in Red Mesa." The name hit him like a shovel to the chest. The wind outside picked up, whistling through the porch slats. His hand fell from the doorframe. He tried to breathe, but there wasn't enough air in the whole desert. "I'm sorry to hear that," he managed. She stepped closer, the firelight catching the steel edge in her eyes. "You look like you've been to Red Mesa before," she said. He didn't answer. The weight of his silence filled the room. Her voice lowered, steady as the hum before a storm. "You got a name, traveler?" He hesitated, then took off his hat, dust falling from the brim like old sins. "Cole Bannister," he said quietly. The name hung between them. The sound of it was enough to make the fire snap. She didn't move, didn't blink. For a long moment, nothing happened at all. Then her breath trembled, but her voice stayed calm. "My husband's name was Henry Carter," she said. "He was killed by a man named Bannister." Cole's hat stayed in his hands. His eyes fell to the floorboards. "I know," he whispered. The clock ticked again, once, twice. Somewhere outside, a hawk screamed and the wind shifted. Eleanor Carter stood still, her face pale under the dim light. She didn't reach for the knife on the counter. Didn't scream. She just stared at him with eyes that had forgotten how to be afraid. He wanted to say something, an apology, a reason, a prayer, but every word felt like a lie. Finally, she turned back to the stove, picked up the spoon, stirred once. "Sit down," she said. He froze. "You look hungry," she added, "and it'd be a sin to waste a meal." Cole didn't move for a long time. Then he stepped inside, hat still in hand, boots heavy on the floor. The stew bubbled. The wind rattled the windows. And somewhere between the crackle of fire and the soft sound of her breath, she began to hum again, slow, quiet, the same haunting melody that tied them both to the dead. Outside, the sun sank behind the ridge, and the desert began to cool. But inside that little kitchen, the heat stayed, tight, suffocating, and alive with ghosts. And Cole Bannister, the man who'd come riding through dust and guilt, knew he'd found the one place on earth where the past hadn't forgotten him. The spoon slipped from her hand and clattered against the pot. The sound cut through the air like a gunshot. Cole didn't move. The chair beneath him creaked as he sat hunched forward, hat in his lap, eyes fixed on the table's worn grain. A single fly buzzed near the window, tapping against the glass like it wanted out. "You killed him," she said quietly. Not a question. A statement laid down like a verdict. He didn't answer. The fire popped, and the smell of stew filled the silence. Outside, the wind picked up, pushing grit against the shutters. "I was the law's hired hand," Cole said at last. His voice was gravel and regret. Red Mesa didn't have a choice in men back then. Sheriff wanted control. I was young enough to believe him. Eleanor's hands tightened on the counter. "And my husband?" He stood up to him, Cole said, eyes still down. "Wouldn't pay what the sheriff called safety fees. I was told he drew first." His jaw tensed. He didn't. Her breath left her slow, trembling. "You remember his face?" "Every night," he said. She looked at him, then really looked, saw the years carved into his skin, the hollow behind his eyes where something had burned out long ago. For a moment, she saw not a killer, but a man chained to his own ghost. Then the wind howled, and the pity died on her lips. Cole rose from the table. "If it means anything, I laid my guns down after that. Haven't drawn since." "It doesn't," she said. He nodded once, accepting it like a sentence already served. The floorboards groaned as he stepped toward the door. But before his hand reached the latch, a sound drifted in from the distance. Hoofbeats. Slow at first, then faster. Not one horse. Several. Her eyes flicked toward the window. Dust rising along the trail. Shapes moving in the heat. "You expecting company?" he asked. She shook her head. "No one rides this way unless they're lost or looking for trouble." Cole stepped out onto the porch, squinting into the sun. The riders were still far, but closing quick, 6, maybe 7 men, their coats flapping dark against the light. He knew that kind of formation. He'd ridden with men like that once. "They're not lost," he said quietly. Eleanor came to stand beside him, the wind tugging at her hair. "You know them?" He didn't answer, not right away. "Then, Claymore Gang. Used to work the border towns. I played cards with their leader once, before things went bad. Heard they'd been hunting me." Her voice was steady. "What?" "Because I quit," he said, and took something they thought was theirs. The riders were closer now, the shapes clearer. One of them raised a hand, signaling. Cole turned to her. "You got a cellar?" She pointed toward the back room. "Behind the stove. Trapdoor under the rug." "Go down there," he said. Her chin lifted. "This my house, and they'll burn it to the ground if they find me in it," he said. "I won't let you get caught in that crossfire." She didn't move. The same stubborn steel her husband must have had flickered in her eyes. "I've lived through worse than gunfire," she said. He opened his mouth to argue, but the distant thunder of hooves silenced both of them. The first shot cracked through the air. A puff of dust jumped from the fence post beside the porch. Then another, closer. Cole cursed under his breath and ducked inside, pulling her with him. "They know I'm here." The two of them crouched low as the sound of riders circled the house. Shadows moved across the windows. "Bannister!" A voice bellowed from outside, rough and mocking. "You old ghost. You finally stopped running." Cole's jaw tightened. "Claymore." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. The same Claymore that came to Red Mesa before Henry died? He looked at her. You knew him? She nodded once. He was the one gave the order. Sheriff just signed the paper. The air between them froze. For the first time, she saw what the wind had carried to her door. Not just the man who killed her husband, but the only one left alive who could finish the job those men started. The gang's laughter echoed through the yard. Come out, Bannister. Let's settle old accounts. Cole's hand twitched toward his belt. The weight of a gun wasn't there, hadn't been for years. His coat was light, useless. You armed? She asked. He shook his head. Ain't been since Red Mesa. The silence that followed was long and sharp. Then she moved toward the stove. Her fingers brushed the edge of the rug. What are you doing? He asked. She didn't answer. The fabric lifted, revealing the faint outline of trapdoor. The wood was worn, but clean, used before, just not recently. You want a gun, she said. You'll find one here. The riders outside dismounted. Boots hit the ground. Voices grew louder. Cole stared at her. You said. I said my husband taught me to shoot, she cut in. Didn't say I forgot how. Before he could reply, she yanked open the trapdoor. The scent of oil and cold iron rose up. Two revolvers wrapped in cloth lay side by side like sleeping snakes. Her eyes met his. You took everything from me once. Don't make me watch them do it again. A pause, thick trembling. Cole reached down and lifted one of the guns. The metal was smooth, polished with care. It felt wrong and right all at once. Outside, Claymore's voice growled through the dust. You got 1 minute, Bannister. Eleanor took the other gun, checked the cylinder, and moved to the window. Then we'd best make it count. He watched her, steady hands, calm breath. The heat shimmered around her, turning her outline to firelight. For a heartbeat, he thought of Henry Carter. Then he thought of justice, the quiet kind, the kind that never made the papers. He loaded a single round, spun the chamber, and looked at her. When this starts, don't hesitate. Her reply was soft, certain. I buried hesitation with my husband. A shadow crossed the porch. The doorknob rattled. Cole raised his revolver. The first man kicked the door open, and the storm began. Gunfire tore through the doorway before the first man even hit the ground. Cole fired once, sharp, clean, and the outlaw dropped like a sack of dust. Eleanor didn't flinch. Her revolver was already raised, her eyes cold and unblinking. The kitchen filled with smoke and echo, the air heavy with the tang of burned powder and fear. Outside, men shouted, boots pounding against hard dirt. Shadows darted across the windows. A bullet punched through the wall, scattering splinters across the table where the stew still steamed, untouched. Cole reloaded fast, the motion practiced even after years of trying to forget it. Two by the porch, he said. Another's flanking round the side. Eleanor ducked low, grabbed the shotgun leaning against the wall, her husband's. She cocked it without hesitation. Then we split their aim. Before he could stop her, she stepped into the hallway and fired through the window. The blast roared, kicking up glass and smoke. A man screamed outside, stumbled, and fell into the dust. Damn good shot, Cole muttered. She didn't answer. Her face was stone. The next volley came harder. Bullets tore through the shutters, thudded into the walls. A lamp shattered, spilling fire across the floor. Cole stomped it out with his boot. They'll set the place alight if we let him box us in. She reloaded quick, shells slipping clean into the chamber. Then we make him think we're already dead. He glanced at her, this quiet widow who'd turned her kitchen into a battleground. There was no fear left in her, only resolve forged from too many empty nights. The outlaws spread wide, calling to each other. Bannister, come on out, you coward. We'll make it quick. Cole leaned against the doorframe, sighted his revolver through a crack. Quick ain't something I do no more, he murmured and fired. The bullet hit true. The gang roared back with fire. Glass exploded, lead whined off iron. The house shook. Eleanor crouched beside him, voice low over the gunfire. How many? For left, he said. 5, counting Claymore. Her gaze hardened. Then we keep going till none. A silence settled outside, sudden and wrong. Even the wind seemed to pause. Cole's instincts prickled. He knew that kind of quiet. It meant someone was moving closer, unseen. He motioned her down, then crept toward the window. Through the haze of smoke, he saw Claymore himself step out from behind the barn, tall, grinning, a rifle in hand. Bannister! Claymore's voice boomed across the yard. Still hiding behind women, Cole's jaw clenched. He rose halfway, ready to shoot, but Eleanor's hand caught his sleeve. "Wait," she whispered. He looked at her, eyes narrowing. She pointed toward the floorboards near the hearth. Henry kept something else down there. He frowned but followed her to the spot. She kicked aside the rug, pried up another board, and pulled free a narrow wooden box. Inside, dynamite sticks, 3 of them wrapped tight in oilcloth. Cole exhaled. Your husband was planning more than chores. He was planning to end Claymore, she said. He just didn't get the chance. He met her eyes. You sure about this? She lit the fuse with a match from the stove. I've been sure for 5 years. They waited. Claymore's boots crunched closer. You think hiding makes you innocent? He shouted. You're just another killer playing at guilt. Cole's voice came low, steady. Maybe, but I ain't the same kind of killer as you. He hurled the dynamite through the open door. The explosion ripped the air apart. Smoke billowed through the yard, fire rolling across the dry earth. Horses screamed. Men scattered. When the dust settled, only 2 figures still moved. Cole and Claymore. The gang leader staggered up, rifle clutched tight, half his coat burned. You still don't know when to die, he spat. Cole stepped off the porch, revolver drawn, face lit by the flames. Guess neither do you. Behind him, Eleanor reloaded, covering the doorway. The firelight glowed against her cheek, painting her like a ghost risen from grief. Claymore fired first. The bullet whistled past Cole's ear. He dropped low, rolled, fired twice. One shot struck Claymore's shoulder, spinning him back. The outlaw cursed, raising his rifle again, until Eleanor's shot split the silence, hitting clean through his chest. He dropped to his knees, eyes wide, the rifle falling from his grasp. Cole walked to him slowly, every step echoing in the dirt. Claymore's lips twisted into something like a grin. You think this makes you clean, Bannister? He gasped. You'll die dirty, same as the rest of us. Cole looked down at him, eyes hollow. Maybe, he said, but I'll die having done one thing right. Claymore fell still. For a long moment, nothing moved but the wind. The fire crackled, licking at the edges of the yard. Eleanor stepped out beside Cole, revolver still in her hand. Her dress was torn, smoke-stained, but her stance was unbroken. They're gone, she said. He nodded, holstering the revolver. For now, she glanced toward the horizon, where the smoke faded into the rising night. He's been avenged, she whispered. Cole's voice was quiet. So has mine. They stood there, side by side, watching the last of the fire die. The desert swallowed the noise, leaving only the wind again, soft, carrying the faint hum of that old tune through the smoke. She turned to him. You could have run. He met her eyes. Not this time. For a while, neither spoke. The stars began to break through the smoke overhead, cold and distant. Then she said, You can stay till morning. He looked toward the wrecked porch, the bullet-riddled house, the scattered shadows of men who wouldn't rise again. Don't think I belong anywhere long. Her voice was faint but sure. You belong where the truth's finally told. Cole looked at her one last time. The widow who'd faced death without blinking, who'd carried the strength of 2 souls. He nodded once. I'll help you bury him at dawn, he said. She gave a small, weary nod. The wind rose again, cool now, tugging at the edges of her dress. Cole turned toward the darkness beyond the fence line, where the desert stretched endless and empty. But for the first time in years, the emptiness didn't scare him. He holstered his gun, eyes tracing the faint trail of dawn light just beginning to touch the far ridge. Behind him, Eleanor returned to the doorway, the revolver still in her hand. She paused, looking out across the wreckage, the home, the dust, the blood, and began to hum again. That same tune, soft, slow, a song for the dead and for the living who had earned their peace. The shovel bit into the earth with a dull, wet thud. Again and again. The ground was hard, packed by years of drought, and every strike echoed through the valley like the tolling of a slow bell. Cole leaned on the handle, sweat streaking through the soot on his face. Beside him, Eleanor knelt in the dust, her hands trembling as she laid a revolver beside each fallen man. No words were spoken, only the scrape of iron against dirt and the whisper of wind curling through the mesquite. The sun had barely risen. Its first light turned the horizon blood red, washing the graves and the ruined yard in the color of memory. Cole finished the last mound, pressed his hat against his chest, and said nothing. Words didn't belong in that kind of silence. When it was done, Eleanor stood. Her dress was torn at the hem, her face streaked with smoke, but her eyes were steady. She looked over the graves, then toward the open desert. "They won't come back," she said quietly. "No," Cole answered, "but others might." She nodded. "Then I'll be ready." He tied down his saddlebag, cinched the reins, and swung onto his horse. The animal's breath came slow and tired, still spooked by the night's fire and thunder. Eleanor watched him. "You heading somewhere?" He adjusted the hat on his head. "Don't rightly know. Just west, I suppose. Always west." The air between them hung heavy. Ash drifted from the porch like lazy snow. "You could stay," she said after a moment. "Help rebuild. There's work here." He looked at her then, really looked. The woman who had once been a widow was now something else. Hardened, sharpened, alive. "You don't need me for that," he said softly. She gave a faint smile, the kind that carried more pain than warmth. "No, I guess I don't." A gust of wind passed between them, carrying the faint scent of stew gone cold and the iron tang of spent gunpowder. Somewhere far off, a crow cried. Cole reached in his coat and pulled something from the inside pocket, a small harmonica, dented and worn. He held it out. "Your husband dropped it that day in Red Mesa," he said. "I kept it. Couldn't say why." Eleanor took it in both hands, the metal warm from his touch. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "He played it every night," she whispered. "Said it kept the dark away." Cole nodded once. "It still might." He turned the horse toward the road, the saddle leather creaking in the morning stillness. The horizon stretched before him, vast, gold, endless. "Bannister," she called after him. He stopped, half-turned in the saddle. "I'll tell them," she said, "when folks ask who saved this place." His voice came quiet, carried on the wind. "Don't tell my name. Just say the past came Callan, and it rode away." Their eyes met one last time. Then he touched his hat and urged the horse forward. The hooves struck rhythm against the dirt, slow at first, then fading into the open distance. Eleanor stood, watching, until he became no more than a shadow against the rising light. Then she turned back to the porch, the harmonica glinting in her hand. She sat on the step, drew a slow breath, and lifted it to her lips. The first note trembled, thin and lonely. The second carried farther, floating through the air like smoke. By the third, the melody had found its shape, the same tune that once filled her kitchen, now softer, older, but still alive. The wind carried it across the fields, through the broken fences, over the fresh graves, out toward the horizon where a lone rider moved against the sun. And far away, Cole Bannister slowed his horse, head bowed, listening. The sound reached him faint and wavering, like a ghost forgiving him. He smiled once, just barely. Then he rode on. The desert swallowed him whole. By midday, the smoke had cleared, and the land went quiet again. The kind of quiet that holds stories, not secrets. In the years that followed, travelers passing through the valley spoke of a ranch widow who never left her homestead, and of a stranger who'd fought beside her one long, red night. Some said he was an outlaw looking for redemption. Others swore he was the ghost of the man she'd lost. But the old storytellers, the ones who remember the way the wind changes when justice is done, they tell it different. They say the widow hummed the tune every evening as the sun went down, and sometimes, when the breeze blew from the west, another voice joined hers, low, distant, carried through the sagebrush. And though the names were forgotten, the legend stayed. A story of a woman who faced her ghosts, and a man who buried his sins beside hers, and of a song, the one that tied them both to the living and to the dead. When the wind hums through the canyon at dusk, some swear they can still hear it. That same old tune, soft, lonely, Free.